Hey up, mate, and welcome to this episode of the BritSpeakPod where we're going to be answering the question, can you actually learn English by watching British TV? Let's talk about it. Hey up, mate, cheers for joining me on this podcast today. I hope you're having a wicked day wherever you're listening or watching this from. Now, if you're new around here, my name is Dan and I'm a British English teacher. And I'm here to help you improve your confidence so you can use more English in your life to do cool stuff, right? And of course, I'm going to teach all about British life, British culture, and of course, British English. So today, we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about, but first, here's a quick advert. Today's episode of the BritSpeak Pod is brought to you by the 30-day speaking practice pack. Now, if you ever struggle to keep up consistent daily study because you're worried about finding good materials or what kind of practice you should do, don't worry, mate. I've taken care of all that for you. You'll get an email from me every day, including a video telling you what to do, some materials that you can use, and a checklist to make sure you keep track of your progress. It's available right now for $29, and you can get it using the link in the bio. Cheers. So there we go. Today, we're going to be talking all about a bunch of stuff. So let's take a look. We're going to be looking at, is learning British English with TV shows actually a good idea? What are the best TV shows for learning British English? How to use TV shows for speaking practice. And I'm going to be answering your questions about British TV shows. So if you're watching live, you can put your questions in and we'll talk about it at the end. Now, today's question is, what is your favourite British TV show and why? There's loads of British TV shows, there's something for everybody, but what's your favourite British TV show and why? So put your answers in the chat and we'll talk about them at the end. And of course, I'll be telling you some of my favourites as well. So, today then, we've got a lot to cover in terms of TV shows and learning English with British TV shows. So when it comes to British TV shows, is it actually a good idea to try and use them as part of your English studies? Like, is it worth your time to spend time watching TV like you're trying to improve your English, right? So today I want to kind of break this down and talk about whether I think it's a good idea or not. Spoiler alert, I do think it's a good idea, but we'll talk about why, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to make the most of it as well. So let's have a look at some benefits then, shall we? So when it comes to benefits of watching British TV shows as part of your English studies, the first thing is you're going to get real world, casual British English. You know, you're going to learn a lot of things like idioms and slang and phrasal verbs that we use all the time in daily life conversations that you're not really going to find in your textbooks, to be honest with you. It's also going to help you differentiate between like informal situations and formal situations based on the language that's being used, right? So that's really important as well. You're also going to improve your listening skills. Of course you are. You're watching TV, you're listening to words, you're going to improve your English listening skills, and you're going to get better at things like different accents. Because I hate to break it to you guys, not everybody in the UK speaks with an RP accent, the BBC English accent. We do, but you're also going to hear other things like regional accents, whether it's Cockney or Geordie, Scouse, whatever it is. You're going to get better at hearing those things, right? You're also going to get a bunch of cultural insights. Now, this is like, basically, it's more related to the culture the TV show comes from. You know, British humour, the different customs we have, the different traditions, and what is like normal in British society. You're going to get some insight into that stuff as well. You'll get contextual learning, which is really important. So not only are you going to pick up these new phrases, these expressions, these idioms and stuff, but you're going to pick them up in context. You're going to understand the situation it's come from because you're seeing it happen in real time, right? So it makes it much easier for you to understand and remember those things and then actually use them in similar situations in your own life, right? So, and you'll also be able to see like how people's communication changes between friends and people they don't know very well, because you'll see lots of different styles of communication, right? And the last thing, let's be honest, is pretty enjoyable. Now, if you're going to offer me a textbook and you're going to offer me an episode of my favorite TV show, guess which one I'm choosing, mate? It's not the textbook. I'm definitely gonna watch TV rather than read a textbook, you know. And it's good because doing something you enjoy helps you stay motivated, you know, and it helps you actually want to do it. Like, motivation is hard in English, but if it's kind of like giving a kid, you know, they go to the dentist and after the dentist they get a lollipop because they've been good. It feels a bit like that for me. So yeah, you're gonna be able to enjoy your practice and that'll make you actually want to do it, which means you're going to be more consistent, which means you're going to make more progress, and it's good. Now, a lot of people say to me like, oh, but I don't like Friends. So don't watch Friends then, mate. There's a million TV shows. Choose something you enjoy. I think the best piece of advice I could give you is find a TV show that you would watch in your own language that happens to be in English, you know. So, yeah, I think it's pretty important to kind of find something you enjoy. Don't just watch it because it exists. Watch it because you want to. And then you're going to probably enjoy it a lot more, aren't you, to be honest? So, yeah, those are some benefits when it comes to TV shows as part of your learning strategy. Now, I've got some tips to make this a bit better for you. So, the question that often comes up at this point is subtitles. Should you use subtitles or not? It's tricky. It's a tricky one. So I always say use subtitles wisely. Like, first of all, do not put subtitles in your own language. That's a waste of time because you won't bother listening. You'll just read it. So use subtitles wisely. You know, maybe watch it with English subtitles the first time. You know, just make sure that you're not missing anything. Make sure that you're picking up unfamiliar words and phrases. Like the subtitles like a backup. You know, if you don't catch it with the audio, maybe you'll catch it in the subtitle. So that's kind of good. And then transition to not using subtitles. Maybe watch the same thing again the second time without subtitles and see how much you actually caught, you know. Because naturally with our brains, for most people, if you're presented with audio or text, you're going to read the text rather than listen to the audio. It's just natural. So, yeah, gradually try to go without subtitles, but at first it's not going to kill you, all right? I also recommend taking notes. If you're watching TV for fun, don't bother with this. But if you're watching TV to improve your English, have a little notebook or something and make a note of words or phrases or expressions or things that you're not sure about as you're watching, you know? So write down new vocabulary, idioms, phrases, whatever it is, and then you can look them up, you know? And once you've done that, look up your meanings, your examples of how to use them in different contexts, you know, contexts, not contexters. Yeah, so take notes, look at the words, but you don't have to interrupt you watching the TV show. Make the notes, then afterwards go and look up what they mean. Because you might find that by watching it, it becomes obvious what it means later on. Maybe the context will tell you what it means and you can just double check later on. So, use subtitles wisely and take notes. The next thing I'd recommend is focus on cultural context, because this is really important. So pay attention to cultural references or jokes, because this will help you understand British humour. British humour is hard to understand, but it's a big part of our culture. So, you know, trying to work out when things are sarcastic or when things are very tongue-in-cheek and things like that. The more you watch, the more obvious it'll become. Especially if you watch comedy shows, you'll get an idea of what's going on. And if there's any terms or traditions or things that you see in British TV shows that you're like, I don't really get what's going on, Google's your friend, mate. Go and have a look on Google. Perhaps Google why in EastEnders they're always in pub, or, you know, whatever it is that you're not sure about, go and have a look. I think it'll be good. Watch with a purpose. If you're watching TV just to watch TV, that's cool, but that's not really English study, is it? So if you are trying to improve your English, you've got to have a bit of a purpose. So when I say this, what I mean is, like, instead of trying to watch a full hour-long show, maybe look up clips that are like 2 to 3 minutes long. You know, for example, I've got a student from Hong Kong. Let's call her Kay, right? And she loves a British TV show called Coronation Street. So in the lessons that I work with her, we often go to YouTube and look up a clip of this soap opera. maybe, 3, 5, 10 minutes maximum. And we'll go through it and she'll listen to it and ask questions. And so, yeah, don't watch an hour-long show because it'll get a bit overwhelming. Shorter clips are probably a good idea. And there's nothing to stop you watching it multiple times to make sure that you've got it. You don't have to just watch it once and be like, oh, okay, I didn't really understand. Try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. That's what people used to say. Now, it's also okay if you want to pause and rewind things because there's a difficult phrase or the accent is hard to understand. I do this sometimes. I didn't really catch what they said and I rewind it a little bit. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Be sure that that's okay. Now, the last kind of tip I've got for you is, I mentioned earlier, choose the right shows. If you're a beginner towards intermediate, start off with shows that are really clear and are very simple ideas and use more simple language. Examples of this are things like, what's it called? The Great British Bake Off. It's a show where it's like a cooking show where they bake cakes or something. I've seen it on TV, but I don't really know much about it, to be honest. And then Doctor Who is another one. Doctor Who's been around for God knows how many years, but it's quite simple. It's just like a sci-fi thing, but the language in it is relatively simple. It's quite accessible. So if you're beginner to intermediate, choose more simple shows, yeah? If you're a bit more advanced, you may want to challenge yourself to something with a bit more regional accent or fast-paced dialogue. So examples like Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, and Fleabag is another one that's got a regional accent in it, so that's worth looking at as well. And then finally, if you're trying to pick up regional accents, there's usually a show that's famous for each area. Like Top Boy is like people call it British Breaking Bad, you know what I mean? But it's in London, it's like gangs and stuff in London, but they speak Multicultural London English, or MLE, right? So if you want to learn that accent, that show's great. Derry Girls from Northern Ireland, really, really popular show. And Coronation Street, I mentioned earlier, from Manchester, it's got like a northern accent, yeah? So I think having those tips in mind are really, really important when it comes to improving your English, right? So that kind of usually leads people to the question, what TV shows are good, right? Like often I'll get the question, but Dan, what British TV shows do you actually recommend? And this is my personal taste, right? It's not necessarily the best list of all time, but it's my personal taste. What I've done is I've prepared 5 shows that I think are really good for people that want to improve their English and British English knowledge specifically. So the first one is the IT Crowd. Maybe you've seen this show before. It's very, very funny. And the reason I think it's good is because it's got simple and relatable dialogue. Characters often use really straightforward, everyday language, and it's probably suitable for intermediate to advanced learners, yeah? Now, although IT, what I would say is there is some words that are a bit jargon, but they're often used in humorous ways, making them easy to understand. So they will use some technical terms, but usually it's kind of in a jokey way, right? It's got a clear range of British accents, The show features the 4 characters you can see on the screen. The one on the right is probably the most famous. Probably you've seen him around. But there's kind of a mix. So you've got Chris O'Dowd, who's on the left, and he's got an Irish accent. They've got Catherine Parkinson. She speaks in a very RP accent. And then, there's other accents in the show. So you're getting quite a wide range of different British accents. There's a lot of cultural references and humour as part of this show. Lots of British humour, which helps you understand like the cultural nuances and the sarcasm and the comedic timing of the whole thing. And there's also a lot of references to like British office culture and how socially awkward people who work in IT can be sometimes. So yeah, you'll kind of get an idea about British workplaces as well, not just, comedy. And then there's episodes are relatively short. I think each episode's about 20, 25 minutes. So it's easy to watch it and repeat it a lot. Now, I think in this kind of show, because I think there's like 3 or 4 seasons of it, you'll get a lot of like repetitive jokes. Like one of the things, every time they answer the phone, because they work in the IT department, they'll be like, have you tried turning it off and on again? And it's kind of good to see those jokes pop up, and it'll kind of reinforce those ideas in your head. So IT Crowd is one that I would definitely recommend. The next one, I mentioned it earlier, is Doctor Who. And the reason I recommend this show is because, once again, you've got the clear and varied British accents. Now, the Doctor is the main character, and he's usually got an assistant with him, right? So his assistant. However, this show has been around for so long that there's been so many different doctors and the different assistants that, depending on which era you watch, you're going to get different accents. You're going to get things like RP, Cockney, Scottish, Northern English, all this kind of stuff, right? So I think it's really important, if you want to get used to British accents, that you watch something like this. Next, you're going to get a lot of rich vocabulary across genres, right? So what this means is Doctor Who, although it's a science fiction show with time travel and all this kind of other good stuff, it also covers things like history and human relationships and ethics. There's quite a lot of interesting storylines that get developed. So you are going to get exposed to advanced vocabulary as well as everyday conversational English, all in the same show. Cultural and historical insights. Like I mentioned earlier, the show usually involves time travel, right? And they'll go back to various historical events, and they'll see historical figures from the past, and it'll offer insights into like British history, and it also makes learning vocabulary in context a bit easier and a bit more memorable, because it's not every day somebody goes back to the Victorian era or whatever, you know. And I think another thing that's really good about Doctor Who, it's engaging and accessible storytelling. Like, it's got humor, it's got drama, it's got adventure, it's got a bit of everything. And people who like Doctor Who often go back to it over and over again for various reasons. But I think for the casual viewer, episodes can be standalone. You can just watch one episode and come back to it another time. You don't have to think about it. Or there's various arcs, like different seasons, where the one story continues over a few. So you can try that for part of a longer narrative, okay? Now, the next one. I absolutely bloody love this. It's called Kunk on Earth, right? So, Kunk on Earth is kind of like a mock historical drama hosted by somebody that doesn't know anything about history, right? So she interviews like famous people, and it's all very funny. So, and the reason I recommend it is a unique blend of comedy and education. You know, the show, it it presents real history in a way that's very entertaining, and it's very satirical. It's very much satire, and yeah, you will pick up words related to history and culture, but also you'll probably laugh quite a lot because it is ridiculous. So yeah, very good. You're also going to get some clear and articulate speech, but more in a northern accent. So the main character is called Philomena Kunk, and she's played by Diane Morgan, and she's got quite a northern accent. I would say it's similar to like a Lancashire, maybe. I'm not sure exactly where it's from, but it's definitely Manchester-ish, you know. And it's tricky, but you'll get used to it pretty quick because she is quite clear. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Nice. So, the next thing I'd recommend this for is British humour and satire, right? So, British humour and satire. Now, we mentioned earlier, British humour is a bit weird. Like, if you're not from the UK, it can be hard to work out why British people are laughing at this stuff. But I think this is a really good introduction to British sarcasm and irony, and the fact, something we call deadpan, which is where they say something that's obviously a joke, but they show zero facial expressions that they're joking, like a poker face, if you like. And I think it's a great introduction, to be honest. And understanding these concepts will make it easier to understand other British comedy shows if you want to go and watch them at a later point. And you wouldn't expect it from this show, but she actually does interviews with experts, and she gets real world experts responding to her ridiculous questions. And there's like this contrast between like the person they're interviewing is usually very formal, very well educated, like an expert in their field, and she's an idiot. And British people like this. I don't know why. But you can also get to learn something. I think there's an episode that she did with Brian Cox, the astrologer. And he's so good in it because he explains a really complicated topic in a really simple way, but she's an idiot at the same time, and it's very funny. So yeah, Conk on Earth, highly recommend. The next one that, although I haven't watched very much of, it's the one that everyone talks about, and that is Peaky Blinders. Now, Peaky Blinders has been around for a while. It's really, really famous. It's kind of historical drama set in Birmingham with, God, what's the guy's name now? It's Cillian Murphy, I think it is his name. So, the reason I recommend this is, once again, you're getting this exposure to regional accents. It's got a lot of Birmingham accents, Brummie. Along with other regional accents, you get some Cockneys in there, some Irish, and it's really good listening practice for accents. You got a lot of rich vocabulary and expressions. I mean, quite colourful language as well, to be honest with you. You're going to get a lot of colloquial, like phrases, idioms, slang from early of 20th century England. So it's also historical as well. So maybe not all the terms are used today, but it's good to pick up some new expressions. And you can build your vocabulary just by listening to this, especially if you like crime. If you're going to be a criminal, this is a great place to learn your English, mate. Now, understanding cultural and historical context is also a big part of this show, because it's set just after World War I in England, right? And there's a lot of stuff related to British society, like class and politics and social change. And you'll understand in context that period of British history and how it affects today, because it's still kind of true for some of it. And the last thing is, the storyline is really, really engaging. And it's something that, it's kind of going to keep you hooked, and you're going to watch it one after another for quite a while. So, yeah, it's quite dramatic. It's very intense, and there's a lot of really good characters that keep people coming back for more. And that's why I'd recommend Peaky Blinders. Now, my favourite is Taskmaster. And I did notice earlier that Erica also said Taskmaster is so funny. Now, Taskmaster, if you don't know, is a British TV show that is kind of like a quiz show or a game show, but it's not. We've got a lot of these in the UK where they're actually comedy shows pretending to be quiz shows or game shows, right? And Taskmaster is one of them. So you've got Greg Davies, who's the Taskmaster, and his little assistant, little Alex Horne. And basically, they set challenges that people have to complete. And they're a bit ridiculous, to be honest with you. The challenges can be things like eat as much watermelon as you can in 30 seconds. Ridiculous things. But the reason I recommend Taskmaster, not only because all of the episodes are available for free on YouTube, which is a great start, it also gives you a lot of real conversations. There's no script. It's just people talking. It's very casual. It's very funny. And because of that, you're going to get an idea of how British people really speak to each other, yeah? So lots of informal language, lots of humour, spontaneous reactions, so you get a good idea of naturally how people react to things. And yeah, you also get some pretty interesting use of vocabulary, to be honest with you. But yeah, very good. Yeah, once again, you got a wide range of British accents and personalities, and this is because each season has 5 contestants, 5 comedians from the UK. And each season is different. And so you've got people from all over the country or even all over the world in different episodes. So you're going to get used to, over the 10 episodes per season, you get used to hearing those accents quite regularly, and you get a wide variety of them. So that's really good as well. It is very, very funny, and it's very, very lighthearted. You don't take it very seriously. So you are going to get to enjoy what they call a bit of British banter. And I think this is a really enjoyable way to learn English without pressure, because even if your English is not good, most of the tasks are very physical. Like Mr. Bean. He doesn't say anything, but everybody understands it because of his actions, his physical humor. This is very much like that. So even if your English is not good, you'll still get a lot from it, I think. And because of that, it's very easy to follow in terms of visual context, And I think combining visual context with new vocabulary is a really, really good way to remember it. And that is why I'd recommend Taskmaster. And that was my 5 favorite British TV shows to watch if you're learning British English. Now, the next topic I've got for you today is how to use British TV shows to practice speaking English. Until now, we've really just spoke about how to improve your listening and your vocabulary, right? But we haven't really talked about speaking. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys that I've got a free 7-day speaking practice plan, which you can download right now using the link in the description. It'll give you 7 different activities you can do to practice speaking, even if you're on your own. It's also got a check sheet so you can keep track of your progress. And like I said, that link is available in the description if you want it. It's totally free. So why not, eh? Why not do that? Now, the thing I want to show you then is I want to show you that you can use British TV shows to practice speaking as well in a number of different ways, right? So a lot of people say, Dan, I thought TV shows were just for practicing listening. No, mate. Nah, mate. You can use them for practicing speaking too, which is cool. Now, last time we mentioned a little bit about shadowing, but I'm going to show you how to use a British TV show to do shadowing today. But first, we should talk about what is shadowing. So what shadowing is you're going to find a video or some audio of a native speaker talking, ideally with a script that you can read or some transcript or some, subtitles or something that you can read along, because it helps when you're getting started, right? Now, this can be anything. It can be TV shows, it can be podcasts, whatever it is. But ideally, find something that is a native speaker speaking as though they are talking to other native speakers, right? That's kind of the plan. So find a video or audio or something like that of a native speaker talking, and then you're going to listen to a sentence and then pause the video, right? So listen to one sentence, pause the video. And then you're going to repeat what they said. And try to copy things like intonation, the pronunciation, and the word stress. We're not too worried about accent. We're not too worried even about understanding what they're saying. We're just worried about the rhythm, the intonation, the pace, and we're kind of trying to mimic what we're hearing, like an echo, which is why we call it shadowing. Your shadow is like a copy of you, right? And this is why we call it shadowing. So that's what we're going to do, right? So a big part of speaking in English is that we don't pronounce every single word individually. So we have to put some things together. And listening to native speakers and practicing copying their rhythm and their flow is very important. It'll teach you things like chunking, and it'll teach you things like pausing in the right place and the stress and the rhythm and stuff like that. You'll also get natural intonation, because English has got this up and down that native speakers naturally know, but it seems like nobody really knows why we do some of these things sometimes. So it's really, really important to kind of listen and learn by hearing it and then copying it. That's really important. You're going to build muscle memory. So putting your tongue in the right place, moving your mouth in the right way, using your vocal cords in the right way is something that needs practice. It's like kicking a football. You've got to do it a lot of times to get good at it. And then it'll also help you improve the speed and the clarity of your speech. You'll be able to speak quicker if you practice going along with a native speaker, and you'll also get better at clearly communicating, okay? So rather than pronouncing each word individually, like I mentioned earlier. Okay, so now that disaster is over and done with in terms of trying to explain the benefits, what I want to do is I want to show you how to do the shadowing technique with a clip, right? So here, I've lined up a bit of a TV show, and it's from Taskmaster, I mentioned earlier. So we're only going to do maybe 3 or 4 sentences, but I want to show you exactly what this looks like. So,
what's the prize task category?
What's the prize task category? Notice what's the, not what is the.
Well, we've asked them to bring in the nattiest knitwear.
Well, we've asked them to bring in the nattiest knitwear.
It's a term I'm sure we're all familiar with.
It's a term I'm sure we're all familiar with.
You'll judge whose knitwear is the nattiest, give its owner your maximum of 5 points, and then at the end of the show, one lucky winner will take home the nattiest knitwear.
Okay, so that's quite a long one, so probably we'll break that up to where he pauses, right? So,
you'll judge whose knitwear is the nattiest.
You'll judge whose knitwear is the nattiest.
Give its owner your maximum of 5 points. And
give its owner your maximum of 5 points.
And at the end of the show, one
lucky
winner will take home the nattiest knitwear.
And one lucky winner will take home the nattiest knitwear. Okay, so that's kind of the point. What you're going to do is you're going to go through each sentence and you're going to practice it, right? But what you can also do is kind of listen for where they're piecing things together, where they're going up and where they're going down, right?
What's the prize task category?
What's the, not what is the, what's the prize task category?
Well, we've asked them to bring.
We've asked them to bring in, not we've asked them to, we've asked. The K disappears. We've asked them to. Listen.
Well, we've asked them to bring in.
We've asked them to. He's from the south of England. I'm from the north. He said asked. I would say asked. But yeah.
Well, we've asked them to bring in.
We've asked them to bring in.
Nattiest knitwear.
So at the end, he's pronouncing nattiest knitwear very individually because he's emphasizing those words. The reason he's doing that is because it's kind of funny. And nattiest is not a word that you're going to hear every day. And he's kind of been funny about it. Like, oh, he even says in a second, everybody knows this word.
It's a term I'm sure we're all familiar with.
No, nobody uses that word. And this is how you can use it to practice speaking, right? Shadowing is a great way of practicing speaking. And that's what I would recommend. Now, I want to invite you all, if you're watching this live, to put in the chat what are some TV shows that you like. And if you've got any questions about using TV shows as part of your English learning practice, let me know. So Aya says, I like Vera and other detective series. Right, okay. I'm not really sure what Vera is, to be honest with you, but I think it's probably like a police drama. I think I've seen an advert for it. And yeah, it's good that if you are a fan of that kind of thing, that's what you like to watch. So you like Vera. Very cool. I'm just fixing the text on the screen. One day I'll get all this correct. So yeah, I like Vera. Very cool. Let's see what other ones we've got. Tefo says, I like Homes Under the Hammer. Oh, wow. I've not heard that for a while. So Homes Under the Hammer, from what I remember, is basically people buy houses at auctions and then renovate them, from what I remember. And yeah, so there's a lot of these kind of what I call daytime TV shows, always on in the daytime. So that's good. We've also got Erica saying Taskmaster. Yep, very good. In Sweden, Midsummer Murders is very, very popular. Yeah, in England it were as well. Midsummer Murders. Midsummer Murders was like a drama show in this like countryside village called Midsummer that always had loads of murders for some reason. Like, it's like the most dangerous city in the world, and it's like in countryside in England. But yeah, it's been around for a long time. Long time. Okay. Concrete Congas, are they on Netflix? Some of the shows I recommended are on Netflix, like Kunk on Earth is on Netflix. I think Peaky Blinders is also on Netflix, but it depends which country you're in, yeah? That's very good. And Ahmed, I nearly called him Kill. Ahmed says, how do you rate Hüfkene? Now, this is an anagram, and it stands for, no, not an anagram, it's abbreviation, acronym. Acronym's the word I'm looking for. How do you rate Have I Got News for You? This is kind of like a satirical show where it's 4 comedians talking about the news from that week. And yeah, I love Have I Got News for You? Absolutely love it. It's really, really funny. But you have to understand what's happening in the UK to get a lot of the context. But if you're in the UK, very, very bloody funny show. Very, very funny. Nice. So that is the TV shows from today then. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, wherever you're listening from. And next week, I think we're going to be taking a look at a very famous sketch from a British comedian that's talking about something that a lot of people get confused about. So make sure you tune in for next week. But thanks for listening today, and I'll catch you next time. See you there.